District and the area and all that kind of stuff. Prior to that, I worked in Southeast Utah in Monticello for 6 years, running a wildland fire module and as an assistant on that crew as well. There's a lot of knowns as we go into this fire season, but there's also some challenging unknowns and some things that make this a unique season for anyone who's been doing fire management. Current conditions, what we're dealing with now actually started out last summer. As you may have noticed, last fall was exceedingly dry. We went months without really any measurable precip. And so we ended up with very low soil moisture at all elevations, low elevation, high elevation. That was due to a weak monsoon and then, like I said, a dry autumn. So that means that even though we're getting a decent amount of snow melt, the soil in most of those areas has absorbed most of that. If you're a boater, you're realizing that the peak flows for a lot of the local rivers has already come and gone, sometimes weeks earlier than normal, and at a much lower flow than normal. So the snow that was around, it's going into the soil, and we didn't even get that much in the first place. We had low snowpack at lower elevations. One impact that has on fire behavior is if the grass doesn't get packed down, it is much easier to burn it the following year. So grass that grew in 2019 during the moist part of the year, early season, is available to burn right now. Had we had a little more snow, that gets packed down, it's not nearly as flammable. This spring, we had at higher elevations a decent snowpack, but it's been a very rapid melt off from mid-April onwards, dramatically faster than most years. I didn't update this, but as of May 19th, we have 6% of normal snowpack at higher elevations. And it's easy to forget just from this past few days of kind of a wetter trend, but we had very little spring rain this year. Several months of dry, as you can see from this, the red and dark red on this map for pretty much all of southwestern Colorado. And most of western Colorado is fairly dry over the last 60 days. So that is shown on this map as well with the drought monitor. The hot spot is definitely kind of southern Colorado, especially southwestern Colorado, Four Corners area. Most of Utah and Nevada and Northern California are also in drought, as well as a good chunk of Oregon. So that really kind of tells you where we're sitting right now. 2018, we were into D4 drought in the same time period. We're in D3 right now. And either way, that's not good for fire behavior, spread, or potential. Another interesting thing, I tend to digress a little bit when I get into looking at these things about different drought indices and fire potential maps, because there's a lot of good sources. Almost all of these are products that are available online. If you want to take a look yourself, you can find them through National Weather Service. You can find them through NOAA. You can find them through the national fire agencies like the NWCG. They all produce things that are based on various modeling and documented drought indices. This is one of them. The Evaporative Demand Drought Index is useful for us because it takes into account, the normal things you think about with temperature, humidity, and wind speed. Those all directly affect fire, but also incoming solar radiation. So this time of year, we're getting towards the peak of summer. June 21st is coming up soon. And yeah, that's going to be a big driver. That really is a factor that we don't talk about very much that can drive fire behavior, is that solar radiation. So once again, there you go. Western Colorado is very much into ED3 and even ED4 for that. So that's dramatic. Another one, hot, dry, windy index, similar to the previous, tells you how thirsty the atmosphere is. That's the summary of our forest fuels guy who really summed it up well with that. We're above the 95th percentile, and only a few years in the last 20 years have exceeded what we're sitting at right now. So that might have moderated slightly with this moist system that's come in, but don't be complacent with that. It's definitely still quite warm and dry, and the fuels are primed out there. There are other drought indices that you might come across that don't really get into the fire, that are not really driving fire. So this is more, I'm just putting this in here for kind of a comparison. The KBDI and the PDSI can be based a little more on hydrologic factors, how much water is there in reservoirs and rivers in the soil. And that's not as relevant as some of these other drought indices for our purposes for trying to figure out fire potential and fire behavior. But they're interesting anyway. I have a little bit of a background in trying to figure out mega drought patterns in the Midwest for the last couple thousand years when I was doing some graduate work on that. But anyway, so there's a lot of different products out there, all of them from National Weather Service, NOAA, those sorts of folks. University of Nebraska at Lincoln does a lot as well. We use those to kind of come up with outlooks for the season that are very specific for fire behavior. So these are produced monthly. These just came out, updated by month. So June, that makes perfect sense. If you've been watching the news, there's been some big fires down in Arizona over the past few days. One of them closed down I-17 a day or two ago. And all of southern Utah is ready to go as well. So this is a pretty typical time of year for that area to be ready to burn all the way up into our area. As you get into July, that kind of expands northward, more so than some years, all the way up into Oregon and Washington. They had a pretty weak winter in the Pacific Northwest. So those areas will become available a little earlier than many years as far as wildfire potential goes. And that's a lot of red. As you hit July, that's more than what you normally see in a normal year. So the West is overall pretty primed right now. By the time you hit August, the idea is that the monsoons will have come and kind of damped it down to normal fire potential for the Southwest and Southern California. But that potential remains in place from Northern California all the way up into Washington, Oregon, Western Montana. And, that's their typical fire season too. That's when the big fires get going up there in that general vicinity. And that continues on with a very little change into September. For that area, still minimal down here. That's September is normally when we would be doing prescribed fire down here. So we would be hoping for kind of that normal to even sometimes below normal fire potential in September if we're going to do prescribed fire. This is another product from the regional office, very similar kind of thing, specifically focused on here. This ends at the Utah, Arizona, New Mexico border as far as what they're predicting. So don't think that those areas are not having high fire potential. They are. It's just that they're in a different region. But yeah, there you go. June, lots of potential for large fire growth. Same thing in July. Similar area extends northwards up into all of northwestern Colorado. And, once again, this is potential. A lot of this depends on starts. There can be times when it's warm and dry and windy for months, and campers are behaving themselves, we're not getting lightning, and things are okay. But one lightning storm or a trailer dragging a chain along a highway can change that very, very quickly. So all of that kind of contributes to the big picture. This graph on the right is today's graph that covers what we call energy release component. And that's really kind of an indication of if a fire gets going, how hot is it going to burn? High energy release component fires are hard to contain, hard to control because they're just burning hot. Lots of heavies are on fire, lots of logs, all the stuff that makes a fire difficult to put out are burning intensely. So you can see it was trending very quickly there for the last couple months above average. And then, yeah, the last few days has really moderated it and knocked it down to just kind of teasing with the average and well below the maximum. But that can also rebound very quickly. As you see in that graph, some of those lines can be very steep. So if this moisture is all we get, it starts to dry out, we can quickly go climbing back up into those high energy release component days and have very, very strong potential for local fire growth and spread. So that's the big picture. Models and experience of firefighters both kind of concur that we're going to have a heavier and longer than normal fire load this season. And other climate modeling is suggesting already that the monsoon may be later and drier than average. And that's a tough one to call. Currently a lot of our prior knowledge and thought about patterns and what's going to happen with weather in this area have been kind of thrown into disarray with shifting weather patterns and strange things going on with El Nino and La Nina. So it's hard to predict, but that's something that they're tending to think later in drier monsoon, which will not help us with fires. So with that, we've already been dealt a bad hand with fuels conditions, with weather conditions, with trends in that regard. And then you throw COVID-19 in on top of that. One thing that is still going to always be the focus for us, regardless of the situation, is firefighter and public safety. That is going to go without saying, regardless of pandemics, regardless of other demands on us, regardless of drawdown of resources. That is what we're looking at as our number one priority. We deal with risk assessment frequently in our line of work, and a lot of that is experience-based. Like for myself, I walk up to a nasty-looking snag or a dead tree that I have to cut down. I'm doing risk assessment of a whole bunch of things that's all experience-based as I look at that tree. With COVID-19, we're still having a very difficult time assessing the risk to firefighters and also to public that is associated with our normal way of doing business. But, we're going to try and meet that difficulty and also follow guidelines that are established by federal, state, and local governments. And right there, multiple levels of authority, multiple levels of direction are complicating this for us and for everyone. But that's what we're dealing with. We have a lot of folks who are focused on making this as easy as possible for wildland firefighters in the field. One of the big changes will be the tactics. We're going to do everything we can to keep fires small. Maybe you've seen on the TV news, or you've seen around here even, like maybe up at Vallecito, the big fire camps where they have a catering unit, they have an area which is packed with tents, they have portable toilets. All that is going to be extremely difficult in this new COVID-19 era. So we're emphasizing strongly a rapid initial attack response with ground and air resources. We are going to use aviation more quickly than we might otherwise. Aviation has its own risks. So sometimes in the past, our risk assessment is, well, we don't need a ship to do bucket work. Critically, let's hold off on that. Let's just try and catch it with ground resources because, helicopters have their own dangers associated with them. Trying to catch these fires small might skew it a little more towards using those aviation resources quickly, getting air tankers in there, getting helicopters in there with buckets. That's definitely going to be something we see more of this year. We're trying to minimize travel outside of our home areas. Just the whole thought of people traveling all over the West to go on fires and the potential for spread of COVID-19 with that, it's something that's a real concern for the federal agencies and also for every firefighter. They don't want to go somewhere that's a hotbed of COVID-19 and then potentially bring that illness home with them. So we're trying to minimize travel. One thing that is really to our advantage is we have strong relationships with local cooperators. Right now, we have an Upper Pine engine and a Durango engine helping us out with local IA. Both of them have been on fires in the last 24 hours in this area. Tremendously helpful resource. Really good that we have those relationships, and it helps us out enormously. We also have other local contract resources that are on call. We have what's called a soft track, which is basically kind of a bulldozer on tracks that has a large water tank on the back. Really a wonderful resource for getting water to places that are difficult terrain where we can't get traditional fire engines. And as Ann was mentioning, we're using a very proactive approach with our fire restrictions. That's proving to be a little tricky sometimes to sell to the public because, if they're at high elevation, just got some rain, well, why shouldn't they have a campfire to get warm and get dry? Well, because of the potential for just one start being a very difficult thing for us to deal with. That's why. So we're reinforcing that. We're trying to do a lot of education as we're going out and talking to folks and interacting with campers. We're doing a lot more patrols than we normally would. And yeah, just focusing on that public education. Social distancing. We've heard that term roughly 2.6 million times in the past few months. And like I said, that means we're not going to be dealing with big fire camps. The challenges with food and briefings of not having people all in one place are real. So we're looking at, instead of having a caterer on site, we're going to bring food in individual containers and disperse it carefully with good sanitation. Briefings, fewer people will be attending them, and they're going to be standing far apart from each other. They're going with what they call a module as one concept, where a crew will work only pretty much with themselves. They won't work and mingle with other crews as much, trying to minimize the spread. So if somebody on that crew gets sick, it doesn't mean that everyone on the fire is at risk. And some positions, especially in more of the finance or logistics in some of the larger incident management teams, they may telework. So they may be not even on scene of the fire. They may be at home doing their stuff remotely through platforms like Zoom. But there are some things that are not really amenable to social distancing. Running a chipper, you can't really social distance very effectively. Oh, my video is not playing. And if you're going to ride in a helicopter, it's not efficient or safe to social distance in a helicopter. So those are just things that we're dealing with as we go on. And we're hoping that with the steps that we're taking, we can keep our firefighters as safe and healthy as possible. PPE. N95 and cloth masks, you wear them going to the grocery store, but they're difficult to use when we're performing physical labor. So we're using them in briefings, we're using them interacting with the public. They're hard to use while we're out working, and therefore social distancing in an open air environment is really our approach there. Strong emphasis on frequent hand washing and vehicle sanitizing. We're buying hand sanitizer by 5-gallon buckets, and same thing with wipes, and that's just part of our protocols now. There's also a stronger emphasis on staying rested and healthy. Firefighters who are busy throughout the season, you do a 14-day assignment, working 16-hour days, that's exhausting. And that can put you at risk for even just simple colds, or things like strep throat have been a problem in the past. So they're going to try and mitigate that as much as possible, get people more rest, do everything they can to keep them healthy and safe. Unknowns that we're dealing with and won't really be able to figure out until we have a little more practical experience include the impact of smoke on susceptibility to infection and the severity of symptoms. Durango 2 years ago smoked out for an extended period of time by the 416 fire. We don't know what that will do with this disease. So that comes into play again with us trying to keep the fires small, producing as little smoke as possible. We don't know when we're going to have widely available, frequent, accurate testing that can have quick results. For example, we had a firefighter on a fire a few weeks ago who was feeling sick, thought it was probably allergies, but got tested anyway. It took 11 days to get that result back. That's not going to be a very practical turnaround time if we're going to continue to be able to work fires and keep people tested and safe. And then the availability of vaccine, if that is available during this fire season, that could be a game changer and allow us to kind of go back to ops normal. But most of the predictions are that it's going to take a little longer to come up with that. But that may be a great option and allow us to kind of go back to normal next year. More unknowns include changes in restrictions by states or counties or communities as far as how much people are able to travel or go around or things like that. A prime example is how much has gone on, how many cases there's been in San Juan County, New Mexico, where it spread very quickly, versus San Juan County, Colorado, which largely locked down and wasn't even allowing people from outside the county onto federal land to recreate for a chunk of time there. I think they've loosened up in the last week, but very dramatically different approaches, which can impact how much people are going to be allowed to travel for fire as this fire season goes on. Less likely for the federal resources, but it may impact a lot of the contractors that we work with. And then there's anecdotal evidence of heavier public land use and potential for human-caused fires. People have been cooped up for months, and we've definitely seen a lot more people out in the woods because that's their option for recreation. Anything that they might be doing otherwise that is more social, not going to happen. So they're going out in the woods, and we're happy to have folks in the woods, but yeah, there's always that chance for more human caused fires as a result of that. So to summarize, vegetation is very dry weeks earlier than normal. We're setting up for potentially one of the more, we have potentially, once again, starts are the key there, that we don't know when we're going to get starts or where. But even with this moderation, we have very strong potential locally and nationally for a difficult fire season. And yeah, the Four Corners is likely to have those problems earlier, and then those will transition to the Pacific Northwest as hopefully the monsoon comes in and gives us a little bit of a reprieve locally. Along with that, we're not planning on doing any prescribed fire this year. A big part of that is because we don't know the impact of smoke on the public and on firefighters. So that's something that we can choose not to do. We're making that choice to not do that because the risks outweigh the benefits of that fuels treatment with the current unknowns of that situation. And yeah, fire resources are less available due to travel limitations. That may change, it may not. We're planning for the worst case scenario and focusing strongly on local resources. And fire camps, again, particularly problematic for the transmission of COVID-19. You have a lot of tired, stressed people who are concentrated in one place and are coming from all over the country and then returning to their homes all over the country and working in close proximity. That could be a perfect storm for an infection. So yeah, we're taking strong measures to try to avoid that. So please spread the word. Be extra careful out in the woods this year. Do everything you can to educate people that you know, people that you see. If they are upset with the fire restrictions, explain to them why they're there. It's as much driven by lack of resources and difficulty with getting those resources as it is by the conditions out in the woods, which are dry, even with this recent rain and the green up. So that's really what I have to say about that. Are there any questions?
No, thank you.
It looks like we have one in the chat box. What is the strategy on large fires if fire camps are not allowed?
That is a good question. We're going to try and disperse it as much as possible. We'll have small groups of firefighters camping spread out all over the place and working with each other, not interacting with other resources. Food will be delivered to them, and we could do video conferencing for briefings or phone briefings and that sort of thing. Just trying to keep people as spread out and minimize that potential for spread. So it's a pretty dramatic change, and it's going to be a challenge for all of us. But that's what we deal with, being handed challenges and dealing with them. That's can be the engaging part of our job. So this is just one of them.
If anyone has any other questions, you can type in the chat box or unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
This is Ann Schreier. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have the signs from a couple of years ago from the Forest Service of the stage 2 for our subdivision, and also another one that says no fireworks. Can I post those out there now on our tractor that's very visible to people coming into the subdivision? Because we're surrounded by the Forest Service and the BLM.
We're not quite to stage 2 yet. We're still having that conversation about whether we're going to get there. If you have ones that don't say stage 2, that just say, no campfires allowed or things like that, that's totally fine to put up. But one thing we've had kind of a challenge with is that confusion that Ann was mentioning about where we are with fire restrictions. So we're trying to minimize that and keep it simple.
These are the great big heavy vinyl yellow ones with the red reflective letters and logos on the bottom, what you can and cannot do, but I don't believe it says any stages.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, if you want to put those up, that would help us. Thank you.
I could probably use another one also.
Okay, I will try to get you one. We got folks going all over the place, so I'll try and get one delivered.
I could go down into Bayfield and pick it up.
Yeah, yeah, that would work too.
Okay.
And
Alright.
and I can get you some of the other handouts to post that do have all the accurate
Okay.
information about the restrictions. I'm going to be spending more time over in your neighborhood, so I can get those out to you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
And Noah, maybe you can share what we talked about before people got on about the fire starts we've had just in the past couple of days from the lightning.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, with this lightning, we've had on the forest 4 small fires. 2 of them were nearby Cito Reservoir, just on the east side. 1 was near Lemon Reservoir, and the 4th was just east of Yellow Jacket Pass. And yeah, just the lightning's gone through, hit snags, and caused very small fires. And we've gotten people on all of those. We've gotten them contained and controlled and largely put out. But it's been because we have a lot of resources just ready to go that we've been able to split up and take care of all those fires so quickly without them, causing a problem as things dry out here over the next few days. So, and people have been great about calling them in. We've, locals have called in all of those, and that's helped a lot for getting folks out there quickly. So yeah, if you see something, call 911. They'll patch you through to the appropriate dispatch center, and we'll go from there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's an update. I tried to type my question and the whole thing didn't show up. I'm wondering if there's an update on mitigation around the Durango urban area where it interfaces with the forested area. I live in the city below Fort Lewis Mesa, and between us and the Mesa, it's large wooded area. And I do have concerns. We've worked with Charlie to do some mitigation, but the city property aligns ours. And there are people that we see hiking up there smoking. And I mean, just looking at what happened, the last couple of years in California and urban areas, I'm just wondering if there is an update on what the city's doing and where their priorities are right now.
So I can actually answer that one because I've been working with the city a lot recently. So the city, we're really this year we're implementing the first kind of WUI-oriented project for city land. They have done mitigation in the past, but it's generally been further away from homes. This year we are actually treating. We started treatment last week in the Skyridge neighborhood, and then from there, basically the next step is to move over to the Crestview area. And so those are 2 of the most densely populated kind of traditional WUI areas where you have, quarter-acre lots backing up right to these completely untreated hillsides and wildland areas. So those are the places that we're starting just because of population density and partially because of risk. And partially because there are established trails in those areas to work off of. And the city does have plans to expand out beyond those couple of areas. But overall they have, I think, when we were working with the BLM, they said that there was 47 miles of kind of WUI boundary where city property backs up to wildlands or to private property or other property. And so it's a slow process, but we are moving forward, and we're going to use this year as hopefully a test to get those 2 areas done, and then expand that treatment out to other areas. But I don't know about the specific plans for your area, but I can definitely reach out to some of my partners at the city and see what they have to say about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Noah, I know that you said right now the monsoon's looking like it might be not as strong and later. Do they do an update on that at any point, an outlook for the monsoons, or is it really just kind of wait and see until they kind of come, if they do?
There's always modeling, and the farther out it goes, the less likely it is to actually be accurate. So yeah, they're constantly running those models and trying to come up with updates. And I don't have a great source to point people towards on that. That more came from a conversation with our forest fuels specialist. But I can try and track that down. I'm sure if I dug around a little more on NOAA's webpage, it would have it in there somewhere. So
Okay, that would be great if you find a link. Maybe we
yeah.
can share. And also, is it possible to get a copy of your presentation for us to post? Refer back to it, or for those who couldn't make it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other questions at this point? Looks like it's quiet.
I'm Ann Delvera, and I was wondering if you know any things that the train is going to do to try to restrict its ability to start fires.
Well, I know they got those diesel engines that don't throw the same sparks that the coal-fired ones do, and I think they're gonna use those more during those times of higher fire danger. But that is a good question. I know they've been shut down with the coronavirus stuff, and I'm not really sure. That is something that they're dealing with. I know, but the specifics and the timing, I'm not really sure about.
Also, are there any plans to do mitigation work near some of the subdivisions in La Plata County?
Charlie would probably know that.
Yes and no. I know that I have some maps from BLM. I know that of kind of the NEPA, the National Environmental Protection, what is it? Act. There we go. The NEPA analysis that has some of the proposed plans for the next 10 years, I believe. And so I can connect people with some of that information. Overall, with the Forest Service side of things, we're a part. So the Forest Service, as well as Wildfire Adapted Partnership, is part of a new Columbine collaborative is what we're calling it now, because the name is to be determined. But we're basically working large scale to align where all the different partners are working to make sure that we're going through and treating areas more effectively across those boundaries. So we are slowly trying to kind of coordinate those treatments. I don't, off the top of my head, remember specifically where some of those priority areas are for the forest or for some of the other agency partners, but we all are having regular meetings to make sure that when the Forest Service is treating an area, hopefully the BLM can come in and treat their adjacent land, the city can come in and do their part, and then Wildfire Adapted can help with that private side of things. So we are slowly moving forward to coordinate all of that, but off the top of my head, I don't remember the specifics of where each individual partners are focusing right now. And we are really in the planning stages of how we want to start implementing coordination of those treatments. So it's definitely something that we're all excited about participating in, but something that's going to be a future project, not necessarily this year.
I have a question. Can anybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I wonder if there's a plan to use the air curtain burner that we've had before out by Vallecito in conjunction with the Pine River Irrigation District.
We are hoping to get that up and running. One of the issues is that historically that has been grant funded, and Wildfire Adapted Partnership does not have that grant funding currently to support that project. One of our ambassadors up in the area last year basically did a fundraiser to get money to support that. If I remember off the top of my head, it costs about $500 for a weekend of that. And if I also remember correctly, we have one weekend basically paid for a weekend last year that we couldn't end up doing. So we have one weekend that we can do it for. I'm waiting on emails back from Pine River Irrigation District about all the financials so that we can start moving forward for that. But it is going to be something that we're going to have to fundraise money for, most likely, in order to make happen beyond that one weekend.
Thank you.
Yep.
And there was a question about chipper rebate and how much funding is available. And so far, we've probably gone about halfway. So if you are interested, you need to jump on that as soon as possible and get that submitted. And we will update as soon as all the funds have been paid out, been used up. We'll do that on the website and also include it in our e-news.
And just to remind everybody, those funds are first come, first served basis. So, so the quicker that you can submit your before and after pictures and the online application on the Wildfire Adapted website, and the invoice, the quicker you can do that, the better. It is first come, first serve.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. What rights does a private citizen have if he encounters people performing illegal activities in the forest that are against the current restrictions, like smoking or campfires? If we come across those when we're out hiking, what rights do we have to try and enforce those on people that are unwilling to listen to the restrictions?
I'd recommend calling the Durango Dispatch Center, reporting it, and they'll get either a law enforcement out there or a fire protection officer, and both of them can write tickets and do the various law enforcement stuff. But that's probably the best way. If people are being difficult, just get a log on your phone, a description of them, and then hand it over to the Forest Service, and we'll do what we can.
Yeah, I'd definitely say kind of reinforce the, call somebody and report it to them. I think it was 2 years ago, I ended up getting notified about some things like that had turned into physical altercations in different areas around the county. And that's the last thing that we want. We definitely don't want it to turn into a worse situation. So sometimes people can be pretty hot-headed about things like that. So definitely, yeah, call in the authorities who have, the jurisdiction in that area. I know that from my conversations with the fire departments, they're happy to go out and have those conversations. If it's on the forest, I think that Ann at the beginning said that there's 4 law enforcement officers, and there's other people that can help with that role.
Hi, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Dina Harms, and I'm with the BLM, and I'm the Fire Mitigation Education Prevention Specialist, and will be the Community Assistance Program Officer for the Durango area. But yeah, I've been over there, I guess, I met some of you guys on last Thursday, and then I was in Durango yesterday and today, and then Bayfield. I met Noah over there yesterday, and then Dolores this afternoon. So yeah, I'm just on here, just learning what's going on and faces and all that kind of stuff, and look forward to working with everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, and another thing I was going to let you know, they're trying to work it so I'm over in that area a lot more than, say, years past, the folks that were in my position. So just, being available for you guys, however I can help.
Great, thanks so much, Dina.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like we have a couple minutes till 6. If anyone has any last minute questions or comments at this point. Not seeing any. Charlie, did you have any last minute things you wanted to discuss?
Not that I can think of. Just, thank you, Noah. Thank you to Dina and Ann for also, mentioning or talking some and being on the call. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you guys more in the future. And yeah, thank you everybody for attending the meeting. Apologize once again for my delay in getting on, but I'm glad that at least the power stayed on this time and that we could hear Noah talk. So thank you, Noah.
You bet. Thanks for hearing me out.
Perfect. Well,
All right. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. And we will keep you updated about our next meeting. I think we're all hopeful that we can meet in person again at some point. But if not, then we'll plan another type of Zoom meeting for our next Fire Council meeting. So thank you, everybody, for attending, and hope you have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.